right, everybody. It is a new week. I hope you all received everything that we were sending out over the weekend as we continued to monitor the situation around the Middle East and North Africa. I don't have anything at the top, so let's go to what's on your mind.
As you continue to monitor, can you give us an update of Tunis and Khartoum, the situations there since the ordered departures on Saturday, whatever day it was?
Situation in Tunis is largely calm. The mission is closed to the public today. In Cairo, our embassy is open, but we are not doing any immigrant or non-immigrant visa appointments. We made that decision just to reduce crowds around the mission, but we are providing American citizen services. Consul General Alexandria is closed today and tomorrow. And as you know, the Egyptians have been very responsive in providing the additional security that we've been looking for.
Sorry, I asked about Khartoum.
And Khartoum. So, as you know, on Saturday, Saturday, after carefully reviewing the damage done to the outside of our building, we authorized ordered departure for all the family members, the non-emergency personnel. The embassy is remaining open under our chargé, and but it's going to be closed to the public, I guess, today and tomorrow.
Tori, in Friday's briefing, Friday evening, you essentially stated that all questions concerning any aspect of the Benghazi attack, the circumstances surrounding it, the outcome of it, etc., would henceforth be directed by you to the FBI since it's their investigation. And yet on 5 Sunday shows yesterday, Ambassador Rice, who works for the same agency as you, was giving the latest U.S. assessment of how this event unfolded, specifically by saying we don't believe it was premeditated or pre-planned, and by saying that those with heavy arms and so forth showed up, in essence, as she put it, to hijack an ongoing demonstration. So my first question for you is, given that Ambassador Rice is out there talking publicly about it and not referring Bob Schieffer and Chris Wallace and the rest to the FBI, may we consider that we can again begin asking you questions at this podium about the circumstances of the attack? If it's fair for the ambassador to discuss it, it should be fair in this room, correct?
Well, let me start by reminding you that Ambassador Rice outranks me, as does my own boss, so she is often at liberty to say more than I am, and I guess that's going to continue to be the case. What I will say, though, is that Ambassador Rice, in her comments on every network over the weekend, was very clear, very precise about what our initial assessment of what happened is. And this was not just her assessment, it was also an assessment that you heard in comments coming from the intelligence community, in comments coming from the White House. I don't have anything to give you beyond that. She also made clear, as I had on Friday, that there is an ongoing FBI investigation. So, frankly, I'm not sure that it's useful to go beyond that. I'm not capable of going beyond that, and we'll have to just see what the FBI investigation brings us.
You would acknowledge, however, that the account of the events, the preliminary account of the events that Ambassador Rice offered, diverges starkly from the account offered by the Libyan president, correct?
Well, we've heard a number of different things from Libya. I would simply say that what the comments that Ambassador Rice made accurately reflect our government's initial assessment.
And one last question, if I might, because Ambassador Rice spoke to this. She suggested that there had been an ongoing demonstration outside the consulate or in the proximity of the consulate in Benghazi that was, in essence, hijacked by more militant elements who came armed to the affair. I just want to nail this down with you. You stand by this notion that there was, in fact, an ongoing demonstration.
I'd simply say that I don't have any information beyond what Ambassador Rice shared with you, and that her assessment does reflect our initial assessment as a government. Please.
The Libyan Interior Minister said today that he dismissed 2 security officers in relation to the attack on the consulate in Benghazi. Is this something that you are expecting? Do you think this is a step in the right direction? And do you think that the Libyans should have taken more fully a responsibility for protecting the embassy in Benghazi? And how close are you in terms of cooperation with the investigation? I mean, in what level, I mean?
Well, we talked about this a little bit last week, and I'm going to stand by what I said, which is obviously the Libyans are leading an investigation. We have our own FBI investigation. We also have close FBI and Libyan cooperation as we both pursue these, but I'm not going to get into the back and forth of who's arrested, what we think, what we know about any of this, and the investigation is obviously going to lead us to the appropriate conclusions about precisely what happened and how it happened.
Can you confirm at least that these 2 security officers have been dismissed because of that?
I'm going to refer you to the Libyans because this appears to be, appear to be, giving me back action that they may have taken.
Do you have confidence in the Libyans' ability to do a prompt and thorough investigation?
I would say that we are already working well with the Libyans as we have throughout this very difficult period, and but with regard to the precise aspects of how we're cooperating on the investigation, I'm going to send you to the investigating agency.
You've had, there's been other investigations that the Libyans were supposed to have done that they've struggled, I guess, to finish. One being the circumstances of Gaddafi's death, I think in October, and I think it's 11 months, and you guys have no information, if that's correct.
I frankly don't know what the status of the Libyan investigation on that is, but with regard to this one, as you know, they're doing an investigation, we're doing an investigation, and we're going to collaborate together. So presumably, information will be shared, and we'll help each other.
Have any of their investigations into various things since a year and a half ago? There was Yunus, there was Gaddafi. Have any of them borne any information that's been solid?
I really can't speak to that, Brad. I haven't looked into all of these different
Friday's
things.
briefing,
Yes.
you said that you would endeavor to tell us if there was anything that had been in that initial timeline that was fundamentally incorrect. Are you aware of anything that was incorrect in that in that initial timeline?
I am not at the moment, but I'm not privy to all the investigative information.
And you're sticking with you will try to tell.
I will.
You will tell us if. Okay.
I will.
And then, secondly, are you aware there is apparently a video of Ambassador Stevens being taken out of the room in the consulate? I have not seen it, but apparently there's some chanting in the background. Are you aware if anyone has in this building has seen this video?
I've heard about this video.
Is it your understanding that the people who were pulling him out were excited that he was alive or appeared to be alive, or is it your understanding that they were celebrating his death?
Matt, clearly this video and whether or not it's authentic and whether or not it has, it's an accurate representation of what happened, whether or not it's Ambassador Stevens is going to be part and parcel of this investigation. I would simply say that speaking as a member of the core of this department, it's very, very difficult to see that circulating on press organizations, and I would ask if that's appropriate in this circumstance, but I'm not in a position to confirm what, who, where, and whether it has any value in this.
Okay, and then just one last thing from Friday, excuse me, from Friday's brief. You again didn't want to get into the number of embassies that actually have Marine Guards. So the Marine recruiting, the center for whoever it is that does recruiting for the Marine Guards, for the Marines themselves, they say that they have outfits or units in about 125 embassies. This is on the publicly accessible websites. Does that sound about right to you?
It does. I'm happy to check it against our data.
So, and it's helpful. There are roughly 200 or so missions.
I will check both of those for you.
Two things, one on Libya and one on Egypt. First on Egypt. My understanding is that Ambassador Patterson was out of Egypt at that time. I think she was here on September 10.
Correct.
Is it the case that on that day, September 10, staff at the U.S. Embassy in Cairo cabled Foggy Bottom, alerting officials here to the effect the video was having and the likelihood for violent protests, and was effectively ignored by Foggy Bottom?
Well, I'm first of all not going to speak about internal government telegrams, etc. What I will say to you is that we were well aware, both through embassy monitoring of social media and other sources available to us, that this video was being used to whip up strong feelings in Egypt that could in fact lead to demonstrations. And it was on that basis that the Chargé took the precaution on the morning of September 11th, or even before they came into work, of having most of the embassy staff stay home that day, well before the protests even began. So when we had the difficulties, there was actually minimal staff in the building because we were already alerted, and we had alerted the Egyptians as well.
Okay, and on Libya, again, mindful that you've already told me once today that you won't be in a position to say anything other than what Ambassador Rice disclosed.
You're going to try again anyway. Go ahead.
Simply on the basis of what Ambassador Rice has publicly disclosed, does the United States government regard what happened in Benghazi as an act of terror?
Again, I'm not going to put labels on this until we have a complete investigation, okay?
So you don't regard it as an act of terrorism?
I don't think we know enough. I don't think we know enough, and we're going to continue to assess. She gave our preliminary assessment. We're going to have a full investigation now, and then we'll be in a better position to put labels on things, okay?
And what message will Secretary Clinton have? You mentioned that the department is working with the Hill in large measure. I think it was in response to an earlier question about Egypt. What message will Secretary Clinton have for lawmakers when she sees them imminently?
Well, obviously we'll let her speak herself to members of Congress, but you can understand that they want to have a full assessment of what happened, what we know, what measures we took at the time, what measures we're taking going forward to continue to protect our personnel and our facilities. I think she, in general, has been heartened that so many members of Congress have reached out to say, what do you need? How can we help? So I think she'll want to talk about all of those things, but she'll also want to, I would guess, and we'll see where this goes, and I'll speak to it after she does it, but as we've said here, to make clear, as Ambassador Rice also did over the weekend, that our assessment is that these people in all of these transitioning countries who have stood up for change and who have fought for change in their own countries, whether you're talking about Libya or Tunisia or Yemen or Egypt, don't want now to let a few mobs hijack their desire for a better future. So America can't turn our back now on these countries. We have to continue and deepen and broaden our support so they have a better, more peaceful, more democratic future, a future where people who have grievances express them peacefully, express them through the ballot box rather than having protests turn angry and violent. So she will want to underscore that. She'll want to talk about it in terms of the programmatic support that we're asking for from the Hill.
Do you expect that she'll be able to answer any of their questions, or will she refer the lawmakers to the FBI's investigation and say that they're
I can't speak to that, but you know, obviously we're all focused on ensuring the integrity of the investigation. Go ahead. Anything else on this part of the world?
In relation to what you're saying about the Secretary's perspective message, given the sort of the urgency of the situation as has been demonstrated by these incidents, is there any chance that the State Department might up its request for aid for these countries?
I'm not going to speculate, Andy, at this point. We're looking at everything, obviously, but first and foremost at security. Please.
Your assessment of the degree of infiltration of Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, in Libya, today?
You're asking me to make an intelligence assessment from this podium. I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry.
Step back and take a 30,000-foot view for a moment here. On Friday, the people who read what we write and who watch us on TV and listen to us on the radio and who are not foreign policy experts but just ordinary Americans who, by the way, happen to be in the middle of a presidential election season, see on their screens 33 different locales across the world, stretching from Western Europe to South Asia, where either U.S. embassies or American citizens, American diplomatic personnel, or Western fast food chains and the like are under attack. And this prompted two lines of thought that I would like you to address. Number one is that the United States, its position in the world, is diminished from where it would have been, say, 4 years ago, because we're under attack. Our standing is obviously diminished because our adversaries around the world feel free to attack us. And the second point that I'd like you to address is the notion that President Obama, with his Cairo speech and his outreach to the Arab Muslim world, that has failed, or that it's been rejected in some core sense, when the locales that we're talking about are all Arab Muslim locales.
Well, I'm going to start, since you are an infrequent visitor to our briefing room here, by reminding you that we don't do politics here. We represent this department in its... I understand, but you're talking about calendar cycles in this country. So I'm just going to lay that marker down just to remind you of what we do here. Let me also remind you that, sadly, this is not the first time, as Ambassador Rice made clear, that we've seen acts of violence erupt in many parts of the world in response to insults against Islam, insults against other religions, and they are often difficult to contain. But the larger point, and this goes to the vision that the President laid out in Cairo, is that in every one of these places that has had a democratic transition, that has had a change, we are seeing the governments standing up and rejecting this violence, rejecting the extremism that these represent, calling on people to respect rule of law, calling on people to express their grievances through the ballot box, through the newly available democratic principles. And that's good for America. It is good for America that so many of these people now have the right and the ability to express their concerns, express their grievances through real politics, through peaceful means. That doesn't mean that that those governments have convinced everybody to use those available methods, but at least we have relationships with governments across North Africa and the Middle East that are democratically elected, that represent people, that are accountable to people, that have to deliver peace, justice, security, prosperity. This is not going to be easy. They have a long road to go, but it underscores the importance of Americans and this country standing with those who want to live as we do, because democratic countries make better allies and friends of America.
So wait, there were 2 points. I'm still waiting for you to address them. Number one is address the notion that this reflects diminished U.S. influence, that we could come under attack like this. And the second is that the President's outreach policy, starting with his great Cairo speech and so forth, has obviously failed. I didn't say I'm agreeing with those points of view, but I've asked, they're out there and you're well aware of that, and I'm asking you to address them. Is our influence stronger? Is this evidence of that? And number two, has President Obama's outreach policy to the Arab Muslim world been a success?
I addressed the second part of that question in making clear that we are now standing with governments across this region that are freely elected, that have to be accountable to their people, and that is better for us than where we were before this Arab Spring. But we can't abandon these people now, particularly because they are facing extremism in their midst. They're facing folks who want to roll back the clock inside their countries and between their countries, and that's all the more reason why we have to continue to work with them. America, sadly, for decades, has been the victim of violence. You can look at the Beirut bombings of the 80s. You can look at terrorist attacks ever since September 11th. We all wish this weren't the case. But these are people who obviously don't believe what we believe, which is that if you have grievances, if you feel insulted, you address them politically, you address them peacefully. And we all have to stand together as an international community against grievance being expressed through violence, through terror, and we will continue to do that. Please.
I'm just curious, one, if the Secretary has made any additional calls since the ones that you read out on Saturday since then, and two, I noticed her schedule for today said she was involved in internal meetings in the department. Are you aware if any of these meetings have to do with this, with the situations, and could you offer us, give us any details on who she might be meeting with, if in fact she is talking about the situation,
Yeah.
who it is that she's seeing?
She also spoke with the King of Morocco on Sunday. That call was very much in line with the other calls that she had. King expressed his condolences, his concern, our commitment to continue to work together for peace, security, justice in that part of the world. As you know, we had our bilateral talks with the Moroccans earlier in the week, so they also had a chance to review those talks. With regard to her meetings today, she has had an update from her team, but she's been updated regularly all weekend long, and she has also continued to direct the continued review of the security posture at all of these missions.
Margaret, any update on the Benghazi attack survivors?
What I have is that they are still interested in maintaining their privacy, Margaret. If that changes, I'll let you know.